Hey guys, Maven here. Now, during a WWE wrestling match, you never want to hear a referee tell you to go home. Now, what do I mean by this? I don't mean pack your bags, go back to Virginia. By going home, that means in the match. Now, that can be a good thing, for instance, if you have a 7-minute match and you're about 6.5 minutes into this match and the crowd's reacted and the ref tells you it's time to go home, that's the proper placement. Now, take that same 7-minute match, but let's assume you hear go home after 3 minutes. That means something has went wrong. Maybe the crowd's not involved. Maybe they're sitting on their hands. Maybe the people in the truck just aren't getting the shots that they need for that segment in the show. Or maybe worst of all, Vince McMahon is sitting backstage, glasses low on the bridge of his nose, and he sees no value added to his multi-million-dollar airtime cost. In a best case scenario, the reason they're telling you to go home early is because they're running low on time. Maybe a segment or two ahead of yours went over and they just need to make it up. But that's not what you're thinking. You're thinking these fans hate me. The guys in the truck see no value added. The ref doesn't like even reffing my matches. And worst of all, Vince McMahon is wondering, why do I even cut this guy a check week after week? One thing you never want to hear a fellow WWE wrestler tell you is, don't worry, a receipt is coming. Now, I've discussed in previous videos all about a receipt, and a receipt is basically a payback. If I punch or kick someone a little too hard, they're going to get me back. And knowing that the receipt is coming is sometimes worse than the actual receipt itself. Now, I would find myself on the unlucky end of a few receipts during my wrestling career, but on one night I was wrestling the big man test, I wouldn't have to wait long to get justice and payback for an ill-timed spinning heel kick I delivered directly to the middle of his face. Now, executing a spinning heel kick is one of the moves that as I'm rotating, I can't see where my opponent's face is to time and properly measure up the distance. So a lot of times I would just warn the guy and encourage him, have your hand up, because as I'm spinning, I'm bringing that foot around. I don't want it to crack you directly in the nose. So on this night, as I threw my patented easy money spinning heel kick, the big man did not put his hand up. I could literally feel the cartilage on his nose hit the outside of my boot. I caught him, and I caught him a lot more solid than I wanted to. As I went over to him, I apologized immediately, and all I felt was 2 pats on my side. Those 2 pats were, don't worry, it's coming. And I wouldn't have to wait long for it. Test, being top of his game and intensity, would place his opponent in the corner and deliver what looked like a very stiff elbow. On this night, he shot me off into the opposite corner and would deliver the elbow with a running head of steam. And I felt every bit of his 280+ pound frame coming directly at me. That was my receipt. And fortunately for me, I didn't have to wait too long, and I received my fair share of receipts during my wrestling career, but it wasn't like that for other guys. Some guys had to wait maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe longer, and the anticipation of the unknown and what's to come is many times worse than the actual receipt itself. One thing you definitely do not want to hear in WWE is, hey Maven, go talk to Fink about your travel. Howard Finkel was a historic, long-time ring announcer when it was WWF. By the time I got there, he was working for the office, he was working backstage, and he was the guy who would, on a weekly basis, take care of handing us our itinerary for our travel. During a TV taping, he would set up backstage, and throughout the day, you'd find your way over to Howard, and he would give you your itinerary. And this would basically basically lay out all of your flight arrangements, where you'd be flying out of. If you needed to maybe go to a different location, he was the one that you would tell, and it ran like clockwork. So why was it bad when someone told you to go talk to Howard? That only means one thing, and that is you're being left at home. You're being left off the road. On a best case scenario, they're only leaving you home for the house shows or the untelevised events, and they bring you in for Monday Night Raw. They would fly you in that Sunday. On a worst case scenario, they're leaving you home, and all the shows, they're going on without you. And yeah, maybe it might seem good on the outside, get a little bit of time off, heal your body up, but you do not, I repeat, you do not want the shows going on without you, because out of sight, out of mind. And while not a guarantee, if they're leaving you home while you're physically capable, 100% healthy, it is definitely a telltale sign that your employment is highly in question. This actually happened to me firsthand back when WrestleMania 20 was going to New York. At the time, I was healthy. I was able to be a part of the show, but I was told that I was not going to be needed. I wasn't not only going to be utilized in WrestleMania, I wasn't needed for any of the autograph signings, for any of the media experiences. I wasn't going to be utilized whatsoever. And yeah, it's going to definitely hurt your wallet not being on shows, but more than anything, just knowing that your value is questioned. And they can play tricks on your mind, wondering, am I going to get that call saying we have something for you moving forward? Or am I going to find myself in the unemployment line? Now, you never want to get backstage and have a referee look at you and say, "You're killing me out there." Now, what do I mean by that? Now, during a match, the action that takes place in a ring, it's not choreographed, but it is timed. And certain things have to happen in certain sequences, and certain things have to happen to get a reaction. And the referee is, in essence, the ringleader to everything happening in that ring. He is getting directions from backstage. The producers, the agent, and sometimes even Vince McMahon is telling the referee during a match what they want done. And if what they want done is not done in a timely manner, yeah, you look like you can't follow directions for shit, but the referee is gonna be the one who takes the brunt of that responsibility. And remember, when he goes back through that curtain, his job performance is being critiqued just as meticulously as yours. And if he was given specific instructions that you failed to act on, he looks like he does not have control of his ring. And like most things during my wrestling career, I had to learn this the hard way through firsthand experience. When they were transitioning my character from a babyface, a good guy, to a heel, a bad guy, I had to relearn how to work, how timing would take place in the ring. As a good guy, as a babyface, your job is mainly selling. As a bad guy, as a heel, you're the one that's doing all the instigating of the action. And this has to be crisp. It has to be timely. I remember I was in the ring with Eugene, and we were going into a spot of the match called the Heat. And the Heat is basically when the bad guy, the heel, takes over the match. And I had Mike Chioda telling me, stay on him, but I wasn't doing it. I was doing something and then letting the crowd react, because I wanted to give the crowd time to react. Where backstage, they knew they needed me to step up the intensity of my heat, because they knew the small reaction I was getting with what I was doing would elevate to here if I just did a little bit more. They knew that. They transmitted that information to Mike Chioda, who then told me, and I sat on it, and I took my time. And then when I got backstage, I had Mike Chioda telling me, "Oh, okay, bro, you're killing me out there." Meaning I was making him look bad, not following the directions he got from backstage. And while it was a mistake that I made, Mike likely took the brunt of the responsibility for that mistake. And I never want to be the reason anyone's job security is in question. Lesson learned, lesson I used moving forward. The next thing you never want to hear as a WWE wrestler is silence. Now, of course, this includes the fans. I mean, no one wants to be irrelevant when they're out in the ring. I mean, cheer me, boo me, don't disregard me. That's a given. But what I'm really talking about is silence backstage. I've mentioned in past videos, it's the best feeling in the world going through the curtain, having the producers, having your agents, having Vince or Pat Patterson or Gerald Briscoe give you that thumbs up or tell you good job. And then going down the steps and going by the monitor and having people look at you and it feels great. And when you have a great match, having people swarm you and tell you, oh, I love this spot, or this was amazing, or you really had the people during this. But when they Moses part the Red Sea and give you a wide berth, a wide lane where not only does no one want to talk to you, but hell, no one's even looking in your direction, that means one thing and one thing only. You did not have a good match. I mean, hell, if people don't even want to address you, that means they don't even have positive criticism to heap onto you. They don't even have any direction that maybe you could have taken your match. And yes, while a wrestling match is two people working together to put forth a good outcome, and sometimes one person can be the reason that something goes off the rails and off the rails quick. Silence backstage leads to resentment. Resentment for knowing that if you can put forth such a bad match on one night, it can carry over to a time when you might be in the ring with them. And in an industry where if people give up on you, that leads to you being left at home, well, the writing's on the wall. One thing can lead to another, which can lead to another, which leads to the unemployment line. Silence is the worst thing you want to hear after a match. Now, this next one is more personal in nature to me, and that is being called the Tough Enough Kid. Now, for those of you who are unaware, in 2001, the WWE had a reality show contest called Tough Enough. I won the first one, and that gave me my WWE career. And while I'm forever grateful for that opportunity, I mean, I am and will always be the fan who was able to live their dream. But I always wanted the opportunity to be able to graduate, to move past just being the tough enough kid. And it's weird. It's not even backstage. It's not even with the boys. After time passed and after I earned some of my stripes, I noticed the guys in the locker room, they no longer viewed me as the tough enough kid. Even the production staff no longer viewed me as just the tough enough kid. They allowed me the opportunity to earn some of their respect. But with interviews I do and still do to this day, I'm forever known as the tough enough kid. And I know what you're saying. Maven, you ungrateful piece of. Imagine if I linked your lifelong success with the first thing you did after you graduated. Is that something that you would want to have hanging over you? I don't think so. Now, this next one is the number one thing no wrestler ever wants to hear, even more than they're keeping you off the shows or silence after a match. The number one thing no wrestler wants to hear is Vince McMahon wants to move in a different direction. Now, obviously, Vince McMahon doesn't have the influence in the wrestling business that he once did. I'm only talking about my era, because during my time, we were all wrestling for an audience of one. Didn't matter what the crowd thought, didn't matter what other wrestlers thought, didn't matter what your producers or your agents thought. If Vince was in your corner, if Vince liked you, you were going places. And if he didn't, well, sorry about your bad luck. Now, backstage at TV Day, wrestlers are always going up to producers, to writers, just with ideas on where their character, where their gimmick should go. And most of the time, these writers, they might blow you off, or we have something for you down the line, or we have to get done with this angle, then we'll explore this. Or a producer might tell you, you know what, that's a good idea. Let me take it and see what they say. But hearing that your hopes, your dreams, your idea means absolutely nothing to the one man in charge, that's about as demoralizing as it can get. And things can be going great. You could be written into several segments week after week. Everything can be on the exact track that you visualized. But it can all come to a head the moment a writer or an agent producer tells you Vince wants to go in a different direction. Once you hear this devastating line, it can have one of two meanings. The meaning you hope it has is they just need time. They need to let other storylines play out, and they need to let Vince get in a different headspace, a different frame of mind. Vince is human like us all, in love with an idea one day, thinks it's the worst idea on earth the next. He goes with the trends sometimes, and sometimes he feels like he is the one making the trends. And if you hear Vince wants to go in a different direction, you immediately start hoping that you have the ability to stay until a new direction, something else that captures his attention is presented. But for most people, it's the opposite. If they hear Vince wants to go in a different direction, that mainly means the sand in your hourglass is running low. And that could mean that maybe Vince doesn't see value in you. He doesn't see a place for you in a storyline arc, or maybe even on his television. He doesn't see where you can be a draw. Everything about the man is transactional. Everything is dollars and cents. He has to pay a certain amount of money. He expects a certain amount in return. For me personally, I know exactly what it feels like to hear that exact statement. After my night as Raw general manager in 2004, after meeting Vince as soon as I came through the curtain wrestling Triple H for the title, after having Vince tell me, great job, we put a lot on you tonight, and you did everything amazing. After hearing all that and thinking my career was on an upward trajectory, a few weeks later, I would have the writers come up to me and tell me, Vince wants to go in a different direction. So I, in the matter of a month, went from being in the main event on a pay-per-view, relegated to obscurity, relegated to valueless in the eyes of the one man who it mattered to. And there would be no coincidence that within a half year later, I would be shown the door. Speaking of which, two other unpleasant words to hear as a WWE wrestler: you're fired. And to hear all about that, click the link on screen.